And welcome back. I'm Bill English, the publisher here at Bible and Business. I want to thank you for joining me today. It's really nice to have you on board. I'm in the 4th episode of a 10-part series on building healthy partnerships in business. As you can see from the list here, there's 10 elements or 10 characteristics, as it were, that help build healthy partnerships in business. And those elements are Christianity, character, communication, compatibility, culture, commitment, compensation, conflict, competence, and chemistry. This content comes from my book, A Christian Theology of Business Ownership, an introduction for Christian entrepreneurs on what the Bible has to say about owning a business. But before we get started today, I'd like to ask you just to head over to my site, BibleBusinesscom, where I have some articles and podcasts and tools and surveys, all written and produced for Christian business owners and Christians who are leaders in business, mostly in for-profit companies. Now, there's a lot of what I do that is applicable to those who lead ministries, parachurch organizations, and that type of thing. But I really write for for-profit business leaders and Christian business owners. So I hope you'll head over to Bible and Business, and while you're there, if you wouldn't mind, just subscribe to my newsletter and just let me know that you were there. I would really appreciate it. So today we're going to look at the concept of compatibility. So let's get going by just making a couple of notes here on compatibility right out of the chute. This really has to do with roles, what I call roles and swim lanes. In other words, as you look at building a partnership in business, does your partner offer the skills and experiences, other elements, which is needed to build the business and is worthy of an equity position? You know, I remember talking to a fairly young guy. He must have been in his early 30s at the time, and he was looking to start a new business. And his brother had some accounting experience, and his father had some sales experience. And so he decided to start this new business, and each of them would take a third ownership role in the business. Even though his dad made it clear that he was already retired and he really didn't want to work but maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and his brother, who had some accounting skills, had told him that he would never leave his full-time job and become a controller or a CFO in this new company. And yet the person that I was talking with, he was the one putting all the money into the business. He was the one taking all the financial risk, and yet he felt compelled to give his brother and his dad each a third of the ownership in this new business. And I advised him that down the road he would end up having a lot of conflict between his brother and his dad, simply because if the business grew, I think the friend that I was talking to, this individual I was talking to, let's just call him Mike. Mike was the guy I was talking to. I think he probably down the road would resent the fact that his brother and his dad had a third ownership in the business, really didn't risk anything to get it started, and they really weren't doing anything to grow the business either. And so it just seems to me that Mike was setting himself up for a lot of conflict and a lot of resentment down the road, and I told him so. And I told him, really, what you need to do is be the 100% owner and just hire your dad and your brother and do it that way. But Mike chose to go his own path and keep the equity positions where they were, and I don't know what happened to that. But that is an example of where you have two partners in a business whose skills and experiences are not they are needed to build the business, but they're not worthy of an equity position. Just because a skill or an experience is needed to build the business doesn't necessarily mean it's worthy of an equity position. So what does become worthy of an equity position? I would suggest it's when people are willing to take financial risks to help either start or grow a business. So in my previous example, if Mike's brother had been willing to maybe dump some money into the business with a view to coming on board full time after the business was big enough, then I would say that's worthy of an equity position. If his father had said, I'm only going to work 1 or 2 days a week, but I'd like to, here's $50,000 or $100,000 to help you get started, that would be worthy of an equity position. So seems to me that simply having skills or experiences which a business needs in order to get started or to grow is not in and of itself worthy of an equity position. There really needs to be some risk involved, because equity people who own shares in a company, they're the ones who take the risk. If there's a loss, they're the ones who pay. Equity and compensation are not the same thing. Equity and compensation work very differently. And so compatibility has to do with understanding roles and swim lanes. And the first role here that we want to look at is, are they really compatible to be an equity holder in a partnership? And do they have the skills and experiences and so forth that are needed to build the business, and they are worthy of taking on an equity position? I would highly encourage you, if you're looking at starting a new business with a partner or whatever that is, if all the partner brings are skills that are easily hired out, I would say don't do the partnership. It's not worth it. But if the partnership comes in, if the other person comes in with skills that are not easily hired out, and that person is willing to financially risk with you, then I would say they're worthy of an equity position. What's the risk, by the way? Just before I go on to this next point, what's the risk? The risk is equity people have to pay for the losses in the business. So let's say you start a business and you put $100,000 into the business, and the business doesn't go. It doesn't work. And now everybody who put their $100,000 in loses that money. Are they okay with that? Did they know that could happen up front? Are you going to lose your family or friendship relationships over that? See, that's what I'm talking about. That's the risk piece of being an equity holder. And so you really need to look at your partners and say, can they risk, and are they compatible with being an equity holder in this partnership? Tough questions, but necessary to ask up front. Secondly, let's go on to the second point here. Is your partner able to stay in his or her swim lane and not venture into your area of expertise? So I've been in partnerships where, I had another partner in one business. He very much stayed in his swim lane, and that was really what helped make it a good partnership. But I've seen other partnerships where each partner just tries to answer all the questions that employees have, regardless of whether it's their area or not. They try to solve the problems, whether it's their area or not to solve, and they don't defer to the other partners in their respective swim lanes. And that can create an awful lot of conflict. I have an engagement right now where I have 2 brothers and a cousin who are each equal owners, third owners in a contracting business. And one of the things that we're having to do to get rid of the conflict, and I mean severe, significant conflict in this partnership, is to establish swim lanes and roles and say, here's your role, this is your sweet spot, here's your swim lane, stay in it. You don't get to make decisions in the other 2 partners' areas. You don't get to do that. Just because you're an owner doesn't mean you're God. Just means you own some shares and you put some money into the business and you're hoping to get that money back out. So staying in their swim lanes. Can the partners stay in their designated swim lanes? And then are they willing to be held accountable for the performance in those swim lanes? That would be probably a 4th bullet point I should have put on here. But the 3rd point that I did put on here is this. Can each partner trust the other's judgment and decisions in their areas of the business for which they are responsible? If you have say three partners, and one of them is really high controlling, and that partner has really strong opinions and ideas on how things should be run throughout the whole organization, then that person's probably not a good partner. They probably should just be a single sole owner of a business. So that way they can just run everything the way that they want to run it. But highly opinionated, highly controlling, my way or the highway type of people make horrible partners. They really do. And so, because they don't trust other people to make good decisions. So, look, does your partner offer skills and experiences that are worthy of equity? And can they take on the risks of being an equity owner? Is your partner able to stay in his or her swim lane and not venture outside of those swim lanes? And can you trust, and can your partner trust you? Can you trust their judgment and they trust your judgment and decisions for those areas of the business for which they are responsible? This is what I mean by compatibility. And if you find that you're not compatible, then don't be in the partnership. And as you're looking at bringing somebody on board, you got to really consider these things if the partnership is going to work. Okay? And if you're in a partnership where there aren't good role definitions and good swim lanes and there's lots of conflict, then these are the things that need to get worked out. And quite frankly, I don't do this very often in my videos, but if I can help solve some of those things, just let me know, and I'll see if I can help through a formal engagement where you pay me to resolve the conflict in your partnership. So really, some of what I'm getting at here with this compatibility piece is really about governance. I highly recommend, these are very high-level governance recommendations here. Governance is how the partnership is run, how the partnership is managed. You cannot be laissez-faire about these things and expect the partnership to work. You just can't. And so governance is a whole area of study, and there's books and books and books written on it. I just pulled out 3 things that I think are helpful from a governance perspective. And the first one is to make sure you have a partner agreement that is signed by all the partners, and that forms the foundation and the operating agreement for your partnership. I'm going to tell you to use a competent attorney to draw up these papers. Do not just go to LegalZoom and think you can pull something off the internet. No, we can just copy and paste and that's good enough. No, it's not. It really isn't. Because if that's all that you value the partner agreement, then you're probably not a good partner to begin with. And you probably shouldn't be in a partnership. So make sure you have a partner agreement signed by all the partners and that you guys live by that thing. Secondly, I would advise your partnership to have an advisory council to give you and your partners outside advice. This council should be populated with trusted advisors and experienced men and women who have kind of been there, done that in your industry, and who can pass along some wisdom to you. That council may cost you some money, but that's okay. If you read chapter 5 in my book on giving and receiving advice, you'll know that I'm a huge proponent of partnerships and businesses and business owners having a panel of trusted advisors that they routinely go to get advice. And if you're a business leader in a for-profit business, you're not going to set up a panel of trusted advisors for the business, but you might have a panel of 2 or 3 people who are informally your own board of directors as you progress in your career. Thirdly, I'm going to recommend that you have annual 360 reviews on your person and work. You invite your other partners and you invite those who work for you to give you 360 reviews. Nothing is more scary and nothing is more helpful than having a 360 review by your peers and your direct reports. By the way, when it comes to governance, I love governance. I think governance is really important. I think it's important to establishing compatibility in a partnership. Here's a couple of books I would recommend that you read. I happened to read these on a cruise to the Bahamas. That'll show you how much I enjoyed the cruise. But one is governance, risk and management and compliance by Steinberg, and the other one is corporate governance matters by Larker and Tayan, I think is how you say his last name, Brian Tayan. And I would recommend both of these books to you for your consideration. If you don't know much about governance, these are two books that you can use to get going on. Now, compatibility over time is another part here of partnerships. It's not uncommon for partners, as they age, to change. Their interests are going to change, their energy levels change, their needs change, their drive change, the things that are valuable to them change. Sometimes their values go through a wholesale change. Maybe they get divorced. Maybe they have an illness. Maybe they just take an interest in a certain hobby and it starts to consume their life. It's not uncommon that as partners age, that they also change. Sometimes a partner will simply stop working or will just disengage. They just kind of, I'm done. But they still expect to get a salary out of the partnership, which never makes any sense to me. So what do you do if your partner flakes out? These are things that your partner agreement should really address. What do you do if your partnership flakes out? What if your partner simply decides that they're not going to pull their own weight anymore? That they've worked long enough and they deserve just to make money out of the partnership without working, which is of course not the way partnerships work. But I've seen more than a few people think, hey, I've worked 30 years. It's time for the other partners to support me. It's just not how it works. But what if technology changes and they don't stay up with the changes? Or what if they prove simply to be unable to continue in the business, either because their interest changed, maybe their health changed, maybe they had some other things happen? What if they turn out over time to become more and more negative, more and more uncivil, more and more arrogant, and that gets to the point where their presence is just damaging to the partnership, it's damaging to the organization, and top talent is leaving because they can't stand to be with this person? What happens? How does the partner manage it? How does the partnership handle that? And also, your partner agreement really needs to look at the difficult what ifs. What if there is a divorce? You don't want to be in partnership with a divorced spouse, right? What if one of them declares bankruptcy? What does the partnership do? What if the partner just leaves and decides to start his own business, or she decides to work part-time in another business? How does the partnership handle that? What if it becomes difficult to work with that person to the point where you want out? You don't care if they stay in the partnership. You're just the one who wants out. These types of issues go both to governance and compatibility, and you need to talk these through and get all of these things codified in your partner agreement before you continue down the road of forming your partnership or bringing on a new partner. Now, look, I can hear some Christians right now saying, look, we're both Christians, or the four of us are Christians, and we believe that we don't need a partnership agreement or a governance structure, and we don't need anything formal like that because, hey, we have a shared Christian faith, and if we have conflict, we're just going to stop and pray it through and talk it through. We're just going to pray it through and talk it out. Well, you go for it. And that's going to work for you until it doesn't. And when it doesn't work, that's when you're going to have to call the lawyers, and it's going to get really expensive, and it could potentially get really, really nasty. And so I'm just a big proponent that compatibility has to be assessed up front and then codified in a partnership agreement where you codify the governance, the operations of the partnership, and the responsibilities of each partner, and how your partnership is going to work from a governance and an accountability standpoint. You simply have to have that kind of an agreement. Whether it's family or not. This is true of family businesses as well as just partnerships between friends or business associates. So when it comes to compatibility, what have we looked at here? I'm advising you to look for partners who bring real value and can stay in their swim lane. And what isn't written here is that I'm telling you, or advising you, I'm not telling you, I'm advising you to get partners who can accept risk. These are partners, part of the compatibility is, can they absorb losses, financial losses? And you guys really need to understand that. And everybody needs to be able to say, yes, I can absorb financial losses up to a certain amount or whatever it's going to be. And then look for partners who believe in good governance. And then finally, look for partners who can adapt to personal and professional changes over time and are willing to admit when they have changed to the point where they're no longer appropriate for the partnership. It's time for them to get out, and then you exercise the provisions in your partnership to somehow buy them out of the partnership. I want to thank you for joining me today. This has kind of been a long one today, hasn't it? But I want to thank you for joining me today. I'm Bill English, the publisher here at Bible and Business. Next week, we're going to look at another element of building healthy partnerships in business. And next week, we're going to look at culture. Culture. That's what we're going to look at. So thank you for joining me today. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me at bill@bibleandbusiness.com. And if I can help you with a nasty, difficult partner conflict, go ahead and send me an email and let me know that you're interested in talking with me. So, again, thanks for joining me today. I hope you go out and make it a great day. Take care.